In the US, there are over 170 million users that are actively on TikTok. Now, out of which, that 60% of those audiences are under 30 years old. The younger generation, definitely is geared more towards a call to action. So instead of saying, wine brand X, you can always say drink X wine brand, right? So having a call to action in your account and just the profile, I think, goes a long way.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Do This Now podcast. It's been a while, this is our 6th episode, and I know that, we're back after almost 8 months. So I'm going to bring this back in 2025. Every month, the idea is to give you one session, one homework, one exercise on what you're going to do, to uplift your marketing. And today we have a very special guest here, Alisha from Colangelo and Partners, leading marketing company. We're going to talk TikTok. What do you need to do now? What are the plays you need to play, especially coming into the January? So Alisha, thanks for joining me in the Do This Now podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, Sid. A lot of exciting news surrounding TikTok and advertising. So excited to jump in.
Super. Alisha, let's really understand TikTok, right? Like a lot of small brands are still trying to, navigate this. They do know how to work on Instagram or other platforms, but I think many people, I'll be very honest, including me, I'm not on TikTok, just because I just feel that it's alien for me right now, and it's too late or this and that. I don't know. Especially, we'll chat like now, especially when US is thinking that it may ban, where do you see? So give me a current scenario of like, why do you think, people should come on TikTok? Why do you think they are not coming on TikTok? And then the third question of, what would you do if you were a brand and knowing that US is maybe banning or not banning, which we don't know?
Sure, absolutely. So why don't we look at it from a macro perspective, right? And like, why should brands be on TikTok? Any brand marketer knows that having a comprehensive marketing strategy is very important to just building your brand awareness and ultimately leading to sales. So in no way, shape, or form is TikTok the only platform that you should, focus on and put all your resources in. But at the same time, it shouldn't be ignored either. I know you mentioned that it feels a little alien. You're not sure if it's too late to be on the platform. Just to answer that, it's never too late to be on the platform. I think in general, brands have an opportunity, especially with TikTok, to really launch their pages and engage with audiences in different and creative ways. And I know we'll jump into this a little later about the algorithm and the way the platform is set up to go beyond your current followers and reach. But just to give some context right now, in the US, there are over 170 million users that are actively on TikTok. Now, out of which, that 60% of those audiences are under 30 years old. So I know there's a lot of discussions right now in the industry we work in, which is wine and spirits, that how do we engage the younger consumers? How do we reach them? How do we speak to them? How do we make sure that when they do make purchasing decisions when it comes to beverage alcohol, that they're choosing our brands? So if those are some of the questions that, brands are currently asking themselves and asking in current meetings, TikTok is a very important platform to consider because just demographically, the audiences that you're looking to connect with are actively using the platform. So it's never too late to be on it. If you don't have an account, I highly recommend making an account. It's free, it takes under 5 minutes, and we can jump into what that looks like once you do have an account set up.
For a brand that is looking to get in on the TikTok, right? What kind of things would you ask them? Let's say if I was your client and I'm ready, okay, I'm sold on TikTok. What would be my next steps? Like what kind of things are you preparing me for?
So let's look at it from a brand that does not have any presence, right? First things first is you want to create a profile if you don't have one already. And in that process, you want to make sure that, either your handle is similar or same to what you have on Facebook and Instagram. And for some reason, if the handle is unavailable, the younger generation, definitely is geared more towards a call to action. So instead of saying, wine brand X, you can always say drink X wine brand, right? So having a call to action in your account and just the profile, I think, goes a long way. In addition to that, it is important to make sure that your bio is updated, right? So who are you? What are you selling? And including a link to your website. Because the way TikTok the platform works is basically not necessarily it's only your followers who are going to see our content, It is open to people beyond your current follower base, which is through your For You page. And it is important that if people do come across your content, they have somewhere to go beyond your TikTok profile because it's probably not as populated as your other channels. And that's why having your website in your bio is very important. And then if you haven't done it already, start posting content. We'll jump into what that content looks like, what are some of the parameters when it comes to length, type, form. But just to call out that you do need to post on the platform for 90 days organically before you can even get approved to be an advertiser. So if you are looking to start Q2 2025, it is important that you start posting organically right now, or else you're always going to be pushed by 3 months into the new year if you haven't done so already.
You gave us great tips on the naming. You gave us tips on the profile. What about the first three posts? Like, is it also, like there will be pinned posts as well. So how do you, do your first three? Is it you advise like about us? What do we do? What's your suggestion, especially when it comes to a winery or a brewery or a distillery?
So this is where I would say TikToks differs from Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram. Because when you look at the Meta platforms, I would consider that more as a content hub for your current followers to come and view your content and get to know you. On the other hand, TikTok as a platform is meant for discovery. And discovery enables people beyond your followers to see your content and then learn more about it. So having said that, your first three posts ideally can be, education about the brand, who you are, any history or background information that they need to know, and some of the key attributes and where to purchase. But don't overthink it, because if you're new to the platform and you're posting 3 videos initially, the chances are that it's not going to be highly discoverable beyond, the 5 or 10 followers that you might have. So it is important more so on TikTok to be consistent in your content posting, as opposed to having a content strategy that goes into content pillars. So that's, I would say, the differentiation in terms of what you would do on Meta versus what you would do on TikTok. You want to be discovered and you want to make sure your content is engaging, not so much that it follows a specific timeline.
Mm-hmm. So let's also go on understanding the audience of TikTok. I mean, we have a vague idea that it's young generation. It's more, dynamic sort of content. Is there fun, humor? That's my understanding. But, I think things have evolved. So what is your definition of TikTok audience versus LinkedIn audience versus, Instagram audience? And what kind of, let's say, basic communication tone you think works on each of those platforms?
So why don't we break it up into 3 categories, right, when it comes to the distinction of audiences? The first, which I know we touched upon a little bit, would be demographics. TikTok's core audience are Gen Z and millennials. We mentioned that 60% of their users are under the age of 30. And it really makes it ideal to really target these younger consumers who are not only tech savvy, but also trend conscious, right? So you want to make sure that you are jumping on different trends that are happening on the platform. You're using trending audio, stuff like that. Another thing demographically to consider is geography. So while you might have different audiences that are global, trends are more regional focused. So what you're seeing in the US might be very different than what you were seeing in Australia, for example. So I think also understanding where your majority of your audiences live and then tailoring the content based on that, especially if you have a global page, is going to be important. The second difference I would say is behavioral, right? So the way audiences engage on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn is very different than how an audience would engage or consumer would engage on TikTok. So for context, I did some research and, the demographic below the age of 30 spend on average 90 minutes a day on TikTok.
Wow.
And most of the time is spent interacting with the content, not passive viewing. So that's the difference where you would say with Facebook and Instagram, it's a lot more passive viewing, education, learning about the brand. Whereas on TikTok, people are liking, commenting, sharing, putting it in people's inboxes who are their friends, partners, family. And the reason for that is because the content is short form. Usually TikToks are under 15 seconds, if not 10. And it's not as polished. It is more fun. It involves humor. It is more engaging in terms of, being able to relate to multiple audiences. And it's not overly promotional. So just having that authenticity in part of your content strategy allows for that higher engagement. The other thing I would say from a behavioral difference would be content consumption. And on Facebook and Instagram, predominantly on an organic perspective, your content is being viewed by your followers. Whereas when you go to TikTok, your content is being viewed by everybody and your followers. And who it's being viewed by is determined by their algorithm called the For You page. And that allows TikTok to determine who's the right fit to view your content, whether they follow your page or not. So again, going back to that highly discoverable content, make sure you're building on trends, goes a long way. And the last one I would say, the bucket would be content expectations. On Facebook and Instagram, people are expecting it to be high quality content. You want high-res imagery, videography. You would love, a beautiful drone footage of a vineyard, of the region. And that's the thing that people are looking for and want to consume. Whereas on TikTok, people want things that are trendy, that are humorous, that are relatable. And at the end, somehow you are able to build your brand into the consumer lifestyle. So it's not so much, hey guys, this is my wine brand, this is my spirits brand, you should buy it now. Instead, it can be Christmas is coming. Are you an anxious host? Here's a batched cocktail that will make your life easier. And guess what? Just use my vodka to do so. That's the difference that I would say between the two platforms.
So the operator, do you believe also needs to be that sort of personality so it's natural for the person posting it?
Absolutely. And, we've had a few conversations about, what's the best strategy to start posting content on TikTok? Do you do this in-house? Do you go to a marketing agency? And my advice always is hire an intern. Hire an intern who is on TikTok all day, every day for himself or herself. That's all they do. They know the trends, they know the audio, they know how to bang out TikToks in, under 5 minutes. And as you start posting content for your brand, you'll be able to see how your audience is engaging with it, how people are responding to it. So overthinking a TikTok strategy, it wouldn't be my recommendation. I would suggest starting to post, seeing how your audience reacts, and then pivoting and moving forward.
Okay, so just want to ask you a question on that. Let's say if intern or a very young person, on that. Now, maybe they don't know much about wine or whiskey or bourbon or things like that, right? And if you are a nice, proper, established, a vineyard, where do you see knowledge or education or the way we have been communicating, how is that person going to talk about wine? Because ideally the customer that particular brand is looking for is an educated wine customer. So, how is that? What have you seen, or what do you advise there? Is it better not to take an educated wine, like a sommelier doing a TikTok or something?
I think there are a lot of wine influencers who are very technical that have a great presence on TikTok, and they're doing exceptionally well when it comes to engagement rates. But I will say, also keep in mind the audience that you're talking to. So if you are trying to reach, a very wine educated audience of a premium and luxury segment, those people are also probably not the ones spending time on TikTok. If you are targeting people who are under the age of 30 or even 35, their expectation from the platform is to have a little bit more of relatable content.
Okay.
So we mentioned that up top, right? TikTok should not be the only channel that you're concentrating on when it comes to communicating your audiences. It is a channel in a multi-pronged strategy for you to consider. And with TikTok specifically, it's not hire an intern and let them run wild. It's definitely onboard them, show them who the brand is, teach them what they need to know. I would say there are a lot of hungry, recent college grads who love to be introduced to new things, want to change how wine and spirits are perceived, and are up for the challenge. So if you can find someone that way who's willing to learn from your team about your brand, about the wine industry, but take that information and translate it to someone that they are talking to on TikTok, which are people who are 25 or 35, that's your sweet spot. So you do not want anything to be overly promotional or overly technical. And even if you do post it, you'll see that your engagement most likely will be lower. And the content that is a little bit more fun and relatable, your engagement will be higher. So there are fun ways that we can go into as to how do you make your content still true to your brand ethos,
Hmm.
but tailored specifically for a TikTok audience?
So let's go on the type of the content that really you think works well for the wine, beer, and spirits brands, right? So if you were to, design a calendar, let's say for January, we go
Mhm.
back to the do this now thing. So, what kind of maybe January, different kind of people are in different moods. They're fresh, maybe they're looking for some, they have more energy, I would say. So, apart like, what would you advise a January social media calendar of TikTok to look like for a spirits or alcohol brand?
Absolutely. So let's, think about what are some of the themes that consumers interact with or think about in January. So it would be New Year's resolutions. It would be, dry January. It would be preparation, anticipation, anxiety of Valentine's Day or Galentine's Day, because you want to make sure you're ahead of the day.
What was the
Not
other day you said? I know Valentine's, but you said something else.
Galentine's.
What's that?
It's only women, no men allowed.
Oh,
We
wow.
honor and celebrate
Oh,
your
wow.
women friends,
All right,
families,
all
loved
right.
ones. Yep. It's like we're not dependent on men, but we can have a good time by ourselves when we call it Galentine's Day.
Cool, cool. Good to know. All right,
Yep. So
carry on.
if you think about some of those days, right? If you look at dry January, people are, actively thinking about it. That's the content that they expect to see. Weirdly enough, you might have the question, well, I'm an alcohol brand. Why would I post about dry January? That doesn't make
Mm,
any sense to who I am. But you want to think about it from a perspective of what is a 25-year-old or the 30-year-old thinking about dry January.
hmm,
So content can revolve something, just thinking off the top of my head, something along the lines of, having a couple of your wine bottles part of your portfolio or spirits lying on a table and a person sitting just staring at the bottles counting down to days for dry January to be over so that they can think about opening it the following month. So that's
mm,
something that you're connecting with the audience is like, hey, we know you're doing dry January. You do you. But guess what? February 1st, these are the bottles that I want to open. And that content will be shared by everybody because you're not talking about the wine or spirits itself. You're
hmm.
talking about a theme that everybody's thinking about, which is dry Jan, and then subtly including your brand in it. So that's an example of what you should be posting in Jan. Looking at Galentine's Day. On Galentine's Day, red wine and Prosecco do exceptionally well. There are a lot of trends on TikTok that show, a little DIY at home girls' night where you paint wine glasses, you paint the Prosecco wine bottle itself, you paint a candle. So you can have content showing, a DIY or, reusing a specific bottle and painting on it and preparation for Valentine's Day. So when 14th of February comes around, you're all ready to host because your bottles are ready, your cocktails are ready, you know exactly what to do. So those are the type of content that you want to be tying in is what are people thinking about? And that's timely.
Mm.
Then doing a little search into what are the trending audios. Every month, different songs are trending on the platform. They usually, the top 40s, the newly released music. Take that music and create content based on that.
Okay. I'll go on some biz dev question as well, right? So ultimately, there has to be a business objective of, like
Mhm.
selling more wine, let's say, or building credibility, ultimately still resulting in sales, right? So
Mhm.
how do you monetize your likes or your followers or any comments that you're getting, like, any tactical plays you can recommend on, building that funnels?
Absolutely. So, in general, it's very important to go through the whole funnel, all the way from awareness through conversion. Launching a TikTok ad that drives traffic to your website for a brand that the consumer has not heard of will never work. Sure, they'll click on the link and they'll go to the website, but you're most likely going to see drop off because a consumer is not going to make a purchasing decision based on a brand that they don't know, haven't heard of, or haven't been recommended from an influencer or someone that they trust.
Hmm.
So I think looking at TikTok, you want to start with awareness. You want to make sure that your brand is, basically telling consumers what you want to be telling them. We're sustainable. We are low
Hmm.
ABV. We are perfect for cocktails. We are preferred, sipping neat, whatever your key messages is. Once you have that, TikTok will show you who your audiences are. So let's say majority of the people engaging with your content are between 22 and 34. And they are based in California, Texas, New York, and Illinois. Then you have that information. What you can then do is launch targeted ads for consideration using content that you know already performed well organically. Take the same creative, put it into a consideration or website traffic campaign, and target just those specific audiences that you already know are engaging with your brand. And then you can A/B test it with a national audience versus the ones that engaged with you. See who's clicking through your website, install a pixel. TikTok now allows you to download a TikTok dedicated pixel. You can integrate it into any of the e-commerce like Shopify, and then you'll be able to see which consumers are buying which SKUs and from where. So what you'll also be able to see is if you have ads both on TikTok as well as Meta, and you have a similar budget on both, you'll be able to also A/B test platform metrics and platform conversion. Then you'll be able to say, in an ideal world, once you test it out, okay, Facebook and Instagram, I'm getting people between 35 and 50 purchasing on average, $65 on their checkout cart. But TikTok, I'm getting people only purchasing $30, but everyone's between 25 to 35. So that doesn't mean that you choose one or the other. You're still selling, but you're selling to different audiences on different platforms. So I think to go back to your question about what do you do once you get the likes, once you get the comments, it's almost like a testing strategy to see what content is resonating with your audiences,
Sure.
taking that and then plugging it into your ads. Because the last thing you want to do is spend money on ads creative that don't really engage. So the organic version allows you to test to then put paid money behind what content actually works and to whom.
So I understand that point where, let's say this content is doing great organically, and now technically you're boosting that and using it because it's proven that this has a potential better reach. And now you're boosting it to the right audiences for, efficiencies, let's say. But if you have zero budget, like completely zero, right? So what do you still do with your followers or likes? Like, do you, whereas in Instagram, we say, hey, thanks for following and blah, blah, blah. We start a rapport, we start a funnel, we start something, we do something. We will do 10 DMs a day just to say hello, Happy New Year or whatever. In my January strategy, it will be like that, for example. What do you think that a DM play or a direct funnel play without any ad money looks like on TikTok?
So I would say TikTok, there's no harm in DMing your consumer. You can definitely say thanks for the follow, stay tuned, we'd love to continue the conversation with you. Absolutely no harm, definitely do it as part of your overall strategy. But I think from an organic perspective, something that's a little bit more efficient to do in terms of visibility and reach is to monitor the platform. It's to spend time on it, on the For You page, and comment on the content that's doing extremely well. So there's a lot of content every day that gets 1 million views, 2 million views, 3 million views, right? So what you'll see a lot of food brands like Burger King, Wendy's, even like tech brands like Spotify, Microsoft, their content, of course, organically talks about who they are, but what content does even better in terms of engagement and reach is the fact that commenting on other trending video.
Wow. Okay.
So if it is, I saw this video recently of a TikTok where there's a young person who's entering the workforce and Microsoft Teams, the tone goes off and all of a sudden they're in panic mode and they're like, oh my God, that's the worst sound ever because I have to hop into a meeting with my boss. And then Microsoft goes and comments on that saying, well, if you don't like the tone so much, let us know what you prefer and we'll change it to something that's more soothing for you. And
Nice.
that comment itself got over 1 million likes, right?
Wow.
So you need to be engaging with the content that's already trending as it relates to your brand.
That's a
So
very
one
good point.
example that I saw on Vine recently for Thanksgiving is a random consumer had posted, when it's Thanksgiving and it's a potluck, everyone's supposed to cook something and bring to the table. Here's what I'm bringing. And she goes through the whole process of taking out a wine bottle, washing it with water and soap, putting it on an oven tray, putting it into the oven, which is obviously not on. And she goes, this is my version of cooking, is just bringing wine to the table. And that got over 1 million views. So as a wine brand, you should go and be commenting on content like that and saying, great idea. This is what we do every Thanksgiving. Click here to learn more about what we have to offer. That's the type of stuff that you want to be doing.
Great. Let's go on influencer sort of marketing or collabs. Could you just give
Yep.
us an understanding of, is there a difference between Instagram influencer or TikTok, and how do you approach them? Is it completely going DM route? What's a good sort of, strategy in selecting influencers? Like if you were to screen. So, in a case example, let's say Jackson Family is one of your client, right? Like that, if there is a nice established brand, who says, all right, here's the budget, find five influencers, how would you sort of screen them, get the ball rolling?
Sure. So just for background context, as of today in the US, TikTok prohibits paid influencer collaborations for alcohol. You are not allowed to pay an influencer for alcohol content on TikTok.
How do they
The
know
re
that you're paying if it's completely separate payment
Because you
thing?
have to disclaim, there has to be a disclaimer that there's a paid component. So that's just any
Ah,
advertising policies across all platforms is if you're getting paid for a collaboration or posting content, you have to disclose it.
understood.
And it's a little, I was looking into it too because I was curious as to why would TikTok allow alcohol brands to advertise, but not allow paid collaborations with influencers for alcohol. And the reason for that is age gating. When it is an ad, it is
Hmm.
controlled by TikTok in terms of who you want to target. So for TikTok, you can only target alcohol to people above 25 years old, even though the legal drinking age is 21 plus.
Hmm.
On the other hand, an influencer is not required to age gate their profile. So there is potential in a paid collaboration that your content is reaching people who are under 21 or under 25. There is no mechanism yet in the
Hmm.
US for influencers to age gate their own profiles, or not strict enough rules that make sure that content is not being shown to people under 25. So that was one of the reasons why, in my opinion, I think TikTok hasn't made it legal yet. I think they
Hmm.
just need to figure out their back end a little bit more, make sure they have clear guidelines on age gating, how they go about it, how the consumer slash influencer can also make sure they're doing it on their end before they can take on alcohol influencer collaborations.
Okay, so what do you do? I mean, obviously you only can, first of all, you're going with 21 and above people, right? That's where you start.
Yes,
What?
correct. So any influencer that you work with, even on Facebook, Instagram, 71% of their audiences need to be above legal drinking age.
Oh, interesting.
So, and that's just a rule of thumb as a good industry practice is if the influencer has majority of audiences below 21, you potentially could be flagged by the platform for working with them and showing content to people who are under the legal drinking age. So by default, we always work with influencers who have legal drinking age above 71% of their total followers.
Hmm.
What you'll see though, usually with wine and spirits influencers is the fact that because they're wine and spirits influencers, not only do they age gate their profile, but of course, majority of the audiences, if not 95% of them are above legal drinking age. It's a little bit more tricky when you work with fashion influencers, lifestyle, culinary. That's when you just have to do a little bit more digging to make sure you're not breaking any laws there.
On metrics, if would love to understand, how do you know something is doing great, or if it's just a post or your page, or how do you measure TikTok? One is that, and then the second is if you would love to know one or two case studies, where you have a problem or a challenge, and then how did you executed that?
Sure. So why don't we break up metrics into two buckets, right? Let's
Hmm.
do short-term metrics first and then long-term metrics, like any other marketing strategy and platform that we have. So for short-term metrics, I would say what TikTok allows you to view and what you can benchmark against is engagement rate, number of people who are liking, commenting, sharing your content, video views. By default, majority of TikTok is dynamic video content. So you want to also make sure and see how many people are actually viewing your content, because people might view it but not engage with it. So having a difference between those two is also very important.
Hmm.
And then in addition to that, the completion rate. So let's say your TikTok video is 40 seconds long. Are people watching the entire 40 seconds? Are they dropping off at 5, 10, 30? And then evaluating what that timestamp looks like. Is it because people got bored at 10 seconds because you didn't get to the point? Or do people drop off in 5 seconds itself because you didn't capture their interest soon enough? That's something that you need to look at from a content strategy as well. And then click-through rate. So let's say, in your ads, you have click now to learn more about our website, or click here to make a purchase on our online shop. Click-through rate, as we always do, definitely something that shows interest, but also conversion. And last but not the least, follower growth. And I would say follower growth is the least important metric for brands to evaluate success on TikTok. Because like we talked about, your content is not only being seen by those who follow you. Your content is being seen by everybody and anybody that TikTok deems as an appropriate audience to view your content. So the better your content does as well initially, the more it gets pushed to additional audiences on their For You page.
If you're hunting influencers or great partners, someone's at 200 followers versus someone's, 2 million, but getting solid likes, the 200, followers is getting way more engagement. That's where you would look at, right?
Absolutely. 100%. You always want people with a higher engagement rate than you want people with a higher reach. Because what often happens is, and this goes back to just influencer marketing strategies, in the last 3 years, brands are partnering more with micro influencers and even macro for people between 100 and 150,000 than the celebrity partnerships, right? Because people with 500,000, 1 million, 2 million followers are not getting the same engagement unless you have a multi-month partnership, which, let's be real, a lot of brands don't have the budget or resources for. So going the macro route, finding people with 20, 30, 40,000 followers who get the engagement from the audiences, right? Questions such as, love that wine, where can I buy it? Or is it too sweet for me? Do you think I would like that sangria? Whatever that is, that's the type of evaluation you want to take into account. So when you transfer that from, let's say, Instagram to TikTok influencers, yes, you want to make sure that, of course, the audiences are above 25, but there are multiple ways to go about it, right? If you see people are asking questions, if you see their content is getting saved, you can gift them product. Gifting product does not involve a paid component, which means it is legal. So gifting them product from time to time and, having an agreement with, we'd love for you to try it, let us know what you think. That's a way to go about influencer collaborations. You can also invite influencers to events. So let's say you're having a launch or a happy hour in a particular market, and there are 5 influencers in New York City that are, NYC Eats, NYC Does, whatever these people's handles are, you can invite them to the event and they can post about the event. You're not paying them for it. So that's another way to go about influencer collaborations. And lastly, what we do at Colangelo is if you are working with an influencer in a paid component for Instagram, you can ask them to organically post on TikTok, should they please. So it's not that the contract is saying that X amount of compensation is for TikTok and Instagram. The contract clearly states that you're getting compensated X amount to share your content on Instagram. If you would like, and you do have a TikTok profile, we would love it if you could also post it on your TikTok channel. So that's one way to go about, you're not paying for it, but there is a little bit of the cross promotion and reaching different audiences.
I'm just thinking about one real, other examples of, D2C sales or club memberships, right? Were you been given any challenge on using TikTok to grow actual D2C sales, or, there was 3 months, let's try this is the budget. Was there any, particular example you can share, where clearly there was a outcome required?
So usually when brands come to us, wine club memberships and sales are the 2 most important conversion metrics on their end. As of today, we're still waiting for our brands to get approved for advertising on TikTok, which is like I mentioned, you need the 90 days to post organically. You have to apply to be an advertiser, which includes working with a TikTok representative to walk you through all the legalities. You have to submit documentation to show that you're incorporated, that you're a business, X, Y, and Z. And then once you submit all those documents, you have to wait for approval from TikTok to then begin advertising. As far as I have heard, there hasn't been, a straightforward, streamlined approach. I've heard brands that have gotten approved in a few days. I've heard brands that have applied 2 months ago and are still waiting for approval. Yes, of course, it depends on brand recognition and how much you're willing to spend on the platform, I'm sure. But I will say for the smaller brands, we're still waiting to get approved, unfortunately. But once we do, I think wine club memberships with specific discount or UTM links allow you to track which partnership does really well. And then also using a similar budget both on TikTok and Instagram to then evaluate which platform gives you better efficiency when it comes to whatever metric you're measuring success against. So if you know that on Meta, you're getting, cost per click and, your customer acquisition cost is $1.80, but on TikTok, it's $4.20, that shows you where you should be spending your money in the short term. So that's our strategy moving forward is once our, brands do get approved, it's A/B testing on Meta and TikTok, seeing who's performing better, and then allocating your resources accordingly.
I think it's obviously better to just go natural and organic for now till your 90 days at least. That's what I'm summing it up. And then you can look at the proper executional paid plays and whatnot. So let's say, in that 90 days, what kind of challenges you've seen? Like, that someone's doing it, but it's absolutely, the person's just, struggling. So what is your observation when you look at some feeds?
I would say one of the main challenges brands are seeing is posting the same content that you are on Instagram, on TikTok, as is, without any edits, right? So treating the two platforms the same way, I would say is one of the biggest challenges because like we mentioned, we know your content is not going to perform well if it's not authentic, if it's not relatable, and if it's not short form. So I've seen, a few wine brands that are posting 1+ minute videos of drone footage of their region, of their vineyards, telling the history and the education about it. And while that content is great, because I know someone on Facebook will spend that minute and a half looking at it, no one on TikTok is going to be spending 90 seconds looking at drone footage of a vineyard. Instead, what you can do is take that 90-second video, splice it into maybe, different snippets of 2 to 3 seconds each, and say 5 things you should know about my region, or 5 things that you need to know about Chianti Classico, and then give them 5 facts each, within like 2 or 3 seconds for a total of 15. And that's the content that you should be posting. So what I'm trying to say is, it's not that you have to create new content from scratch. It's taking the existing content you have and adapting it to make sure that you're communicating with the TikTok audiences correctly. So don't spend time posting the 90-second video. Take it, splice it up, make it maximum 15 to 20 seconds, add facts, add a voiceover, add a relatable, note to it. And that should be a TikTok strategy there. So I'd say one of the biggest challenges is who has time and who has the knowledge and the know-how to do it. And I think that's where you get someone who is very adept with the platform itself. So someone who's 22, 23, 24, get them part of your team, tell them who you are, what your key messages are. And then this person will know exactly how to take that 90-second video and put it in 15 because they'll put a trending audio, they'll put 5 facts from your press release, and then they know how to post it and boost it to your audiences. So that's where you can really efficiently be able to take existing content and tailor it for TikTok. So I'd say that's one way to do it. And the other challenge that I see a lot of brands do is overthink when it comes to content, right? So having exceptionally high quality, no voiceover, no relatability, that's what people do not want to see on the platform. So, spending time with making sure that every pixel is correctly edited in post-production for your photo, just to get the perfect wine pour, that's most likely not going to do well. Instead, what will do well is take a backdrop, show yourself opening the bottle, do a slow motion of you pouring it in, swirl it, take a sip, and give your top 3 tasting notes, or why it is the perfect Tuesday night bottle, whatever it might be. So people are thinking about content as to it's Tuesday night, I'm exhausted, I just want to have a good glass of wine. Be that glass of wine that the mom is wanting to drink on a Tuesday night. So make it relatable and don't overthink it.
Got it. Perfect. Let's go on that other, hedging question of the US banning TikTok, if that happens. Let's say, if you are a brand where you're exporting into some countries, you build some TikTok, you've put in effort, you are in UK, Australia, where it's allowed, how can a US company, if you're based there, it's just going to be, are you advising companies for VPN play, or what are you planning, let's say, for those clients?
So I would advise against a VPN play. I think, looking at who you are and where majority of your audiences are, that's the platform that you would choose that is legal in that particular region. So like we mentioned at the top of our call, TikTok should not be your only platform in your marketing strategy. TikTok is just one of your platforms and an integrated version of how you are communicating with your audiences. So let's say, unfortunately, if TikTok is banned in January, you should still be dedicating your resources to Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, as well as, Google search, SEO, email marketing, all the other channels that I know all the brands are currently doing. If you are a global brand and TikTok is still available in your country, I would continue going down the path of creating a profile, posting organic content, and then potentially getting approved to be an advertiser. Because in my opinion, I don't think TikTok is going to be banned forever in the US. At some point, there will be legalities taking place that allow for TikTok to come back. And if you already have a presence and an audience globally, you can very seamlessly then post for the US audience and garner your follower growth, garner the reach once it is legal. Because if you just ignore it completely, but you do have audiences that are global, you do have purchasing options that are global, and then you don't do anything on TikTok and say 2 years from now, TikTok comes back to the US, you're going to be starting from scratch when a lot of the other international brands already have a global page, already have a content strategy, and know exactly what their audiences are looking for. So if you are a global brand, work with someone outside of the US, continue building a TikTok page. If US is your only audience that you want to talk to, with the only place that you can purchase and buy your product, then potentially focus more so on Meta, LinkedIn, and other channels. And we can cross the bridge of TikTok if and when it is approved in the
Hmm.
US.
One last one, on the other side, I'm also anticipating a lot of traffic and all this 100 million people coming on Instagram and doing more stuff, and more content is going to come, more supply is going to come, because now they'll all come back on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram a little bit, that would be the first sort of platform where a lot of people would come
That's
uh,
true.
to sort of say, hey, folks, follow me on Instagram, I'm going there, and all that will happen, right? Uh,
Yeah.
Prices will go up in advertisements there as well. So are you boosting money in the first couple of weeks and making hay while sun shines? Because what if the ads become double after that?
If ads had to become double, I think that there is everything is dependent on your competitive set, right? So your 60 cents goes a lot further if your competitors are only spending, like 20 cents total. But if your competitors are spending $1 and you only have 50 cents to spend, indirectly, I think you're going to be able to, it would limit your reach about visibility as well as the audiences that you're speaking with. So I understand what you're saying, but I think it's less about the platform itself doubling the prices. It's more the competitive landscape of the brands and how much money they're willing to spend on the channels. Right now, I think Meta has done a great job of making sure that while there is a lot of competition, that your bid prices stay within limit. So, we have brands that advertise all the way from $250 per month to $5,000 per month. And if you look at it from a cost per click, cost per thousand impressions, cost per engagement, they're pretty consistent across the board. The only difference is a brand with $250 is reaching fewer people, whereas a brand with $5,000 is reaching more. So it's
Hmm.
not that the more money you have, the lower your cost will be. Your average cost per metric still remains pretty consistent, no matter the budget you have. So I think to answer your question, yes, I do think there'll be a lot of traffic going to Meta platforms if TikTok is banned. But I think it just gives brands an opportunity to be more creative and maybe spend more money on those platforms to continue reaching the audiences that they are. On the influencer side, however, I think you'll see the opposite effect. I think because there's more competition, potentially you'll be seeing more affordability when it comes to the collaboration fees because the competition is higher. So if 10 influencers are willing to work for, 5 brands, obviously you're going to see the more efficient people providing the more efficient costs getting the business from the brand. So I think you'll see a flip reaction when it comes to influencers than you would do with social media advertising.
Super. Alicia, appreciate all the tactical tips here. Closing remarks on anything that you think people can do to start, or to get the ball rolling for January? Any other things that we've missed?
I would say, don't be intimidated. If you don't have a TikTok page, create an account, start small, test, test, test. Digital marketing and especially TikTok changes every day. The algorithm pushes different content every month. So planning 6 months ahead or 12 months ahead is probably not the best strategy for TikTok. You want to be thinking 30 days ahead, maybe 45 days. And if you're posting content or planning content for 45 days from now, you're probably going to have to edit it anyway a week or so before you post it, because the audio you might have chosen today might not be trending in 45 days, or the theme or concept that you've chosen today might not even be trending in 30 days. So plan overarching content themes, but tailor them more regularly and consistently to make sure that you're just leveraging the platform that you have access to.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Where can people find you if they want more, or how can they work with Colangelo? Let's say, do you want to just say a couple of things about what kind of services you guys offer?
That would be great. Thank you. So if you have any questions or like to discuss TikTok strategies or social media in general, reach out to Colangelo and Partners. Our website is colangelopr.com. We do everything from PR, events, to a whole digital division that includes social media, influencer marketing, content creation, paid search, SEO, email marketing. You say the word digital and we do it. So definitely feel free to reach out. We'd love to have these discussions. A lot will change in the next few weeks, and it's all exciting in terms of what we would do as an agency and what brands need to be doing as a marketing strategy. So I can also drop my email in the chat if that's helpful, but colangelopr.com is where you can reach out to us, and we'd love to discuss this further.